Smaller traps, probably you'll be able to release it, but the bigger traps, and like the big beaver trap, this is like a water-only trap. These things are just nasty. There's single and double springs. These hurt. These really, really hurt. And this thing is like big time. This is a big time trap here. So you want to set these away from people's houses, away from any lanes where people might be walking their dogs or anything else. In my state, in Ohio, I can't set a 220 on dry land. I've got to have it at least in water. Even the 160, this is a 6-inch trap. This is still too big for me in my state to set in on dry land. Kentucky doesn't have that law. The big 330 beaver traps, these are almost always set in water. In Ohio, it's got to be submerged, fully submerged to set it. The small, the Conibear, this is the 110. So this is going to be like what would be considered like the classic survival trap. That's pretty small. You can fit these in your pocket. You can fit these in haversacks or anything else. Great trap to get started with. But along with your setting it at a proper location, it is a kill trap. It was designed for longer trap checks, but in modern times, you're still going to check your traps every 24 hours. It's possible you have a miscatch. We're going to set these up as a cubby set on a couple locations here, where the coon is going to actually, or whatever animal is going to crawl into the trap. It's possible if you don't have your bait far enough back that the raccoon just reaches in and grabs it, so you'll get a reacher coon. And in that case, it doesn't kill the animal. You've just got a hold of it. So you owe it to the animal to make sure you do 24-hour trap checks. And again, that just makes everything look bad. If somebody who's walking along and sees a wounded animal that's been in the trap for extended period of time. So as far as reasons for trapping, people do trap for cash. The fur market is very fluctual. It goes up and down depending on politics and fashion. It's a global market, so just because people aren't wearing fur in Ohio and Kentucky doesn't mean they're not wearing it in China and Russia. Another aspect of it would be nuisance trapping. That would be another way to get into this venture and make some money at it. I did take and pass the nuisance trapping permit for Ohio. I just haven't done it. I just don't have the time to do it. But there's not much meat on the bone anymore for making money with fur. Another thing would be food. Tim and I were talking before about the amount of space this takes up. If you had a bucket full of these things, how much food you could possibly get for this. Well, you're not really eating filet mignon and whitetail and things that you're commonly thinking of, but when you're looking at pure old meat, this gets food that you're not going to have access to in a traditional hunting situation. Stores up great, and these are like multi-generational. So my great-grandkids, as long as these traps are taken care of, are going to be able to reuse these. Homestead maintenance, that's another one. Groundhogs come underneath sheds. What got me started with trapping in the first place, got me back into it. We have a pond, and I had muskrats, and muskrats will dig through and just drain a pond. It'll go from a drainage ditch to the pond, burrow under, and now I don't have a pond anymore. If I did not take means to get rid of the muskrats, I wouldn't have a pond. Raccoons, we build out in the middle of an open field, and raccoons that come up on the porch, they get into the barns, so you have to kind of maintain your area long term, or they're just going to take over. So the body grip, that's what this is called. Conibear is what everybody calls them. That was invented by Fred Conibear in 1957, but generally it's a body grip style trap. There's also round body grips, so they're not all square, but they're kind of unique. So this is going to function the same way, but it's just round. And again, you go from beaver to tiny, and it's all the same principles. So as far as the traps go, the 110 Conibear or anything sized like a 110, that's actually like a 4.5-inch trap or something like that. You're primarily going to go after like muskrats for this, as far as a fur-bearing game. In a survival situation or states where you're allowed to trap squirrels and rabbits, this would be your go-to trap for whitetails, squirrels. We're going to make a couple of squirrel sets out there. I've also caught fish on the 110 Conibears. I've caught frogs. I mean, these things will set out and they will catch whatever goes through that hole. So that's the main thing to think about, positively and negatively. We are going to be using some different size traps. I've got some down over the hill. We don't have them here. I've got a 5-inch, which is a 155 Conibear. That's big as I can use in my state. This is the 160. So this is like a 6-inch square. So this would be a touch small for coon, but it is designed for raccoons. So anything raccoon and smaller. So groundhogs, possums, skunks, anything like that. The 220 is a 7-inch trap. This is the money right here. This thing is small enough, compact enough to carry, not too dangerous. It's going to hurt, but it's not going to really do a whole lot of damage if it gets you. But this is the money maker for raccoon-sized game and down. And then you say you got otter in these. So you can get beaver in these. I'm not a beaver trapper. We don't have it in my area. But this, if you were going to start collecting traps for even to get started in the trapping or any type of survival trapping, the 220s and the 110s are where your money's going to be. The big 330s, this is Robert's trap. I don't have such a beast. Again, this is a beaver trap basically only. They make like a 280 for otters. You can catch otters in these things. So there's a bunch of odd sizes that you'll come across, but these are the main ones. Where'd those round ones go? Okay. So these are brand new traps. These have never been set. So as they come from the factory, they've got like a grease on them, oil to keep them from rusting. First thing you're going to want to do with a new trap is you got to prep it. If you set this trap out today, it's going to be shiny, full moon, all kinds of things. The critters are going to shy away from this trap. First thing I always do is degrease them. So just Dawn dishwash, wait till your wife's gone and put them in the dishwasher, use the sink, however you got to get it done. Then after that, I usually give them a coat of rust. So I'll spray vinegar on them and I'll throw them outside. If you're in a hurry, after you degrease them, I see a lot of people just spray paint them now. I've never personally done that, but just a light olive drab kind of spray paint seems to work pretty well. Once you get a coating of rust on them, here's a good rusted trap here. So my traps are already treated for the season. They should kind of look like this. My 110s will look like this after 1 year. So if you just let these go, they're gonna rust up on you. Part of the new trapping season is inspecting your trap. So you're going to want to make sure that your trigger wires are in one piece. These do break off from time to time, these little wires. You can orientate them in different positions depending on what kind of animal you're targeting. You want to make sure your dog's free. This is a dog. This is the trigger bar, or this is the trigger. You want to make sure everything, you still got decent spring tension. But once you get this rust, I usually clean them all off just with a garden hose or whatever, and then now you're going to dye the trap some way. Logwood dye, you can use sumac berries. There's a lot of additional ways to get a dark coat on this trap. And I think that's what this is. This is probably like a logwood. It's kind of, if you can see the color, it's kind of a rust color, but it's kind of a black color. It's not really a paint. You can tell it's more of a stain. Now this one here, this is a speed dip. This is what I actually prefer to go with. It lubricates the trap a little bit. It goes on a lot better. If your traps don't have a good coat of rust on them, you'll dip them down in the dye and come up and it didn't look like you do anything. So you need some kind of rust to get the dye to adhere to it. Now with the traditional leg hold trap or foot hold trap, after you dye it, you take an additional step and you can wax the trap to speed it up. With Conibears, they're kind of fidgety anyway when you get them set. And if you wax Conibears, it's a really good way to trap yourself. So we're not going to wax Conibears at all. This speed dip is a little bit of a slick finish, but I've never really had an issue with it. Probably the worst thing I've had with this is it's a thicker product. It goes on thick, that's what I like about it. But you have to make sure your trigger bars still move. And if it doesn't, you just give it a little wiggle, and it usually is pretty good. So one of the reasons I started with the Conibear for this class, and it's such a popular survival trap, is because there's not a lot of ancillary equipment involved. So you can just take this trap and go off into the woods and trap. However, I had a whole Jeep load of crap coming down here today, so that kind of, you can take it to whatever level you want to. We're going to set some of these traps in a situation where we just have the trap and set it. So we're going to be making stakes and stabilizing off the landscape. We're also going to be utilizing some brackets, some stakes, some different kind of ways that would speed things up. If you're commercially trapping, you're trying to make money at this, or if you're just maintaining your homestead, you don't necessarily want to be walking around trying to find sticks to hold your trap upright. So it's all about speed and flipping the coon.
Yeah.
So it's all about speed. So a lot of these things, it's not necessarily required. It comes in, they work a little bit better than just manufacturing something off the landscape. But it's a speed issue. So we're going to be going over a lot of that. So some of the things that I show you don't necessarily have to have. So this is a safety here. So this is a Conibear safety. Does everybody have one? Does anybody not have one? Okay. You just got to be careful. So the Conibear safety, I use them on any trap that's a double spring. So I usually don't use the safeties on the 110s. We'll go over setting this and stuff in just a minute. So what the Conibear safety does is while you're working the trap, it just keeps it from being able to close. And this is the wrong size for this, but you get the concept. This is a really good idea to keep your safety, to keep a Conibear safety. And again, with the bigger trap, it's going to have more tension, so it's going to hold itself on.